You're listening to Toronto's #1 real estate podcast, powered by Watson Estates. The most successful local real estate investing starts right here, right now. Here's your host, broker, investor, and social media influencer, Bradley Watson.
Good morning, investors. Bradley here from Watson Estates, and today is a beautiful September 22nd day to talk about real estate. In fact, we're going to talk about the softening real estate market and what signs you got to watch out for as we round through the rest of 2020. You're listening to the largest and fastest growing podcast for Toronto real estate on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And we're going to ask some questions today. CMHC recently put out a report and they talk about the vulnerabilities. It's all over the headlines, you've probably seen. So how vulnerable is the housing market according to CMHC? We're going to answer that question today. And then we're going to jump into permanent residence applications because the acceleration of the declines is real, meaning we're getting more and more drops. Am I confusing you yet? In the number of permanent resident applications. We're going to look at some of those figures. And what does the OREA, the Ontario Real Estate Association, recommend to address the two biggest issues, in my opinion, in our market in the long term is unaffordability and the supply crisis. And I don't think they did a very good job in the recommendations. We're going to analyze and look at that. Speaking of analyze, we are analyzing cash flow properties, and we're sharing those out with our listeners. You can check in the description below if you want to sign up. Go jump over there. And we're looking for 15% return on investment if you can, and we're sharing it out with our investor clients just like you. So make sure you jump in on and put your email down for that list, or send me a message and I can send it to you as well. And in other news, as it relates to our podcast, I get a ton of people asking to see my pretty face. Even though it's the morning, I might have to put a little bit of gel in my hair and throw on a shirt because you all know I'm doing these butt naked and film my videos in front of a studio, which I've been putting together. So I'm excited that that'll be coming out shortly as well. Stay tuned. All right, so let's get into our market. You guys ready? So CMHC, they would have you thinking that the Toronto real estate market is overrated. So in honor of that crappy reality, we're going to laugh at things that are overrated. I'll give you an example. Yo mama jokes. They are overrated. They're old, they're a waste of time, they're repetitive, and they're trashy. Just like yo mama. All right, let's get into some topics here. You've probably seen out of the headlines coming out of the Toronto real estate market, and you look up Toronto real estate on Google, you'll see these articles talking about a quote, moderately vulnerable amid housing overvaluation of homes in the housing market. So we've got moderate vulnerability according to CMHC. Well, what do they say exactly? Well, in cities such as Victoria, Moncton, and Halifax, there was a widening gap between the selling prices of houses and the price economists would expect based on population growth, disposable income, mortgage rates, and employment, the Crown Corporation said. And this is an ongoing question, is what defines overvaluation? What makes it overrated? Those are just some of the examples, but I think they're putting a little bit of words in the CMHC's mouth. Because here's what they say. That data comes from the agency's housing market assessment, which gives the housing market a grade based on whether home building and rising prices could ultimately affect the stability of the economy. The report doesn't look at whether homes are affordable, but does try to inform home buyers and lenders on what would happen to the equity in their homes if a sudden economic shock led to a spike in unemployment, for instance. So I think we're really overreading. We're reading into this story a little bit too much, right? We're listening to what the CMHC has to say, which obviously all ears are perked because earlier in the year, they made very drastic predictions on our market crumbling 12 to 18%. Well, they haven't really pulled their punches all that much. They're kind of sticking to their ground and they're staying with this risk. In fact, it's the exact same risk, this moderate degree of vulnerability that they gave, the same grade back in February and in June. So they're saying, in other words, things haven't really changed, though they're acknowledging things have changed, right? Because the report's analysis of home prices overvaluation relies on analyzing Canadians' income, the authors suggested that the risk might be underestimated. So they're saying it could be worse. It could be worse. Again, we're going to say you're overrated, but we don't really know how to define overrated. So we're just going to say we don't really describe affordability. We're just kind of, it seems very touchy-feely. But do you really expect CMHC to change their posture? I mean, they came in guns a-blazing. It'd be really awkward if all of a sudden CMHC's like, you know what? Never mind. Haha, gotcha. This is a quote from I believe this is from Bob Dugan, from a CMHC economist. The unprecedented income supports from Canadian governments to households, such as the CERB and the EI benefits, provide relief to individuals experiencing financial hardship due to the COVID-19 crisis. These sources of income are, however, temporary. There you go. Problem number one. Risk number one is CERB, or employment benefits. And it's going to obviously transition into what would be the bigger problem in housing, which is the inability to pay your mortgage, right? CMHC economist Bob Dugan continues, CMHC still expects a severe decline in home sales and in new construction to come as the economy recovers from the pandemic. So we're not out of the woods yet. We are not out of the woods. I don't think we are out of the woods yet. That's funny. I just said that. This is a quote. I literally just said that. I certainly hope our forecast is wrong. Me too. Me too, Bob. Me too. In May and June, CMHC has given a grim outlook for the housing sector, including a steep decline in housing prices. So it's kind of like we haven't changed what we're saying. Well, what are they saying? Although realtors have reported record high home sales and prices in July and August, Dugan said he is not convinced that there is a, quote, sustainable basis for the current home buying demand. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. Oh, we'll see. And the report gave Canada a, quote, low risk of price acceleration. And this is key, guys, but noted that prices are rising moderately, more quickly in Ottawa and Montreal. So there's a few other cities. In fact, there was another article that came out talking to the areas. Let me see if I can jump down. Ottawa, Montreal, Moncton, and Halifax have now entered what they say is these kind of overrated cities. Like Toronto and Vancouver were obviously already there. These areas are overvalued as well, and they're emerging with this imbalance in these housing markets. So it's something to keep an eye on. But let's move on. Dugan declined to forecast. This is from a CTV news article. I like to try and grab different articles and put them all together, mash them, and get the good stuff. So this one comes from the CTV news, talking about the same conversation with Dugan. He declined to forecast whether the GTA market would increase its vulnerabilities, saying the situation was currently too complex despite its general overvaluation trend. So generally, Toronto's overvalued, but we're not going to make a statement specific to Toronto. So, of course, we in Toronto read this article and we assume it's for us, but they haven't actually said anything related to the GTA. So we're going to need to stand by. We're going to need to hold on to that and watch for that down the road. But let's be honest. CMHC, they believe Toronto's overpriced. They believe we're overrated, just like dad jokes. They're just regular jokes that turn into dad jokes, really, when it becomes apparent. Shut up and move on. Okay, so here's another thought. When in this conversation of what defines being overrated, it's very difficult, or overvalued. If unaffordability is defined, for example, by rent versus ownership cost, I thought that was to me, that's one of the things that stand out as like a great argument. So your cost to rent versus your cost to own, right? If you own that home and it's so much more expensive than renting, therefore it's a ridiculously overvalued market. Well, if that's the case, if we take that to its logical conclusion, then COVID has actually made things so much more unaffordable, because it's been driving down the demand for rentals. It's been bringing price of rentals down, which means that is so much more of a viable option to live in our city. Unfortunately, we're going to get to OREA's recommendations in a little bit. They focus so much on home ownership in addressing unaffordability and the supply crisis, when really the supply crisis has been almost completely addressed in the rental market as of late, right? And this ability to own a home or have a place to live, not own, but live. Can we not just put a roof on people's heads and be comfortable with that? Why is it that everybody needs to own the property that they live in? All right, kind of taking a little bit of a spin here from the Toronto Sun. There was an opinion piece, and I'm just going to grab the highlights here because it kind of overlaps a little bit, but come to the big points just to bring everyone up to speed. The Canadian Bankers Association, they reported, what's the final deferral program number? 760,000 Canadians skipped a mortgage payment, and we've talked about that here before. As of September 13th, there were more than 78 billion people who had been paid out from CERB. Fun fact. So what is the new criticism of our market? And why do I say criticism? Well, here is the title, as we got our podcast title here today. There are signs of a softening real estate market. Ba, ba, ba. All right, so what is the criticism? Why is there softening happening? Right? Why? So here's what they say. 3 weeks into September, it seems safe to say that there has been some changes afoot. As my colleague put it, quote, the tectonic plates are shifting and you can feel it. For the first time in a very long while, you're hearing talk of a return to a, quote, balanced market in which there is sufficient supply to meet demand. This isn't something that you're broadly seeing yet in the freehold market, though there are certainly some great houses selling for less, but it's plainly evident that in the condo market, there has been a flip. There is so much supply that it's hard to even keep up with the flood of new listings. Lofts and condos that would have sold in bidding wars just weeks ago are languishing on the market with only a handful of showings. So he's pointing here to the ongoing crisis we've been navigating for months. We've been talking about this in the condo space, but they're kind of bringing everyone up to speed that there is a real problem. And not to mention this idea of the mortgage cliff, right? This deferral cliff. And there's a backlog right now because there was a point here that they made. Well, we would have to, he said this, we would have to wait to see what happened in September to see if the widely anticipated mortgage cliff the economists warned about would really come to pass. I'm really nervous to say he's right here because the problem is if mortgage deferrals is an issue, you're not going to see that in September. And I've learned a lot of this from my conversation with the guest that you're going to hear tomorrow. Make sure you tune in, talking about power of sale deals. Guys, they are filling up the system with applications for power of sale deals or foreclosures in our system, but it is backlogged. So even though, yes, there's a lot of people applying, it's going to take months and months for that to happen. My guest believes it could take all of 2021 to get caught up in the number of power of sales that are outstanding. But all that to say, moving along, considering current case numbers and the very strong probability of a return to some degree of lockdown, you can bet we're only beginning to wrap our heads around what might come next. Woo! Well, we've been tracking condo prices for months. But now, obviously, this article is bringing it, and it sounds as though it's like just out now. Like, this just in, condo prices are down. But maybe, just kind of being a devil's advocate here, maybe that means we're nearing the bottom, right? It makes me think of a few quotes. Warren Buffett says this, be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. I love that quote. Well, everyone's getting pretty fearful. Maybe it's time to get greedy. But there was this quote from this 18th century British nobleman, Baron Rothschild. Maybe heard of the Rothschild banking system. And he said this, buy when there's blood in the streets, even if the blood is your own. So maybe you're sitting in a condo and you're like, crap, I just lost $80,000. Well, even if the blood is your own, buy when there's blood in the streets. I love these quotes, but like, who quotes a guy from the 18th century, right? It's so overrated. It's like a 90s concert. Oh, the good old days. Back when concerts cost 45 cents, 50 cents featuring Nickelback. Get it? You have to subtract the Nickelback. Anyways. Okay, moving on. We're going to go to a better dwelling and we're going to talk about immigration because hopefully through this podcast, you're getting a little bit of a sprinkle of all of the risks that hit our market. A little bit. Little samplers, right? Little Costco samples. Canada's largest real estate markets see permanent resident declines accelerate. This is one of the few articles that I've seen recently from Better Dwelling that actually, you know what? Because it's so statistic oriented, I like it. It's nice. Canada's largest real estate markets have seen another demand factor almost disappear. The Government of Canada data shows permanent resident admitted fell in July. The decline was strongest in two of the country's largest real estate markets, Toronto and Vancouver. Meanwhile, Montreal is starting to see improvements in contrast to last year. So let's look at the Toronto permanent residence applications. Well, they're saying that they fell 64%. This is in July, by the way. Obviously, there's a little bit of a time delay, but it's interesting to see what happened through the second half now of 2020. The number of permanent residents admitted to Toronto is seeing a decline. The declines become larger. Kind of a skewed angle to this because they did go up before they went down, but that's okay. There were 4,450 permanent residents admitted in July, which is down 64% from the same month last year. And year to date, we are down 40.8% compared to the same period last year. July's decline is almost 50% larger than June. So the declines are getting much larger. That's their point here. But they've got these little charts, cute little charts. And when we look at the stats for Toronto, because I mean, that's what we're looking at here. In February, we had over, it looks like actually way back when in 2019, we were over 12,000 in a single month of new applicants. Well, these are people admitted. They say admitted to Canada. Well, just this year in February, we were still over 9,000. Then COVID happened and April shot all the way down to below 2,000, below. Then everyone's like, oh my God, the immigration numbers are falling, right? But in June, it jumped up. It nearly doubled to 7,000. That's kind of where we caught it. We're like, yeah, but the numbers have gone up. And from there, my expectation was that they're not going to keep accelerating. We're not going to get 12,000. We're not going to get even 9,000 back where we were in February right away. But the fact that we're at 7,000 is still pretty good. And I think the consensus, even Better Dwelling, I remember, was saying it's going to be pretty flat from then on out. It's just going to be like, because people don't come in the wintertime. I mean, me and my family were packing up in India and we're going to move to Toronto in the December, right? Really? No, not doing that. You're going to wait until the summer. The summer months is when everyone goes. Well, so you'd expect, I expected those numbers could float, 6,000 to 7,000, somewhere in there, but no. In July, the numbers are now out and they're showing 4,500 people. That's a pretty substantial drop. Almost the entire amount that went from May into June is now vaporized going into July. So I think we need to be a little more nervous and we need to be paying attention to this as we round into next month, right? We expected flat, but of course things have gone down sharply, almost on a dime. And they say here that permanent residence flow is often seen as a driver population growth, a big factor for real estate prices. All of these things are connected, guys, because immigration leads into the rental market. The rental market, in this case here, is not very strong, and factor in also Airbnb restrictions coming in, definitely locked down by January in the city. And this is going to mean the resale market is going to be affected by the rental market. So immigration moves into rental market is being clobbered. And if in fact that transfers over into the resale market, that's where we have a problem. Just like we see the trend with CERB, right? When CERB stops, the problem's not CERB. The problem is the mortgage deferrals or people's inability to make those payments, which then lead to power of sales. So we've got like kind of this flow happening. But let's just leave it here. Maybe next year, that'll be when the immigration happens. Maybe. Because it seems this year won't. It won't. 2020 is a write-off, right? Oh, how we long for 2021. Speaking of 2021, they say New York has the best New Year's Eve party, but I'd say it's overrated. Every year, they drop the ball. Okay, we're just some hot topics here before we get into our last and final and exciting topic. Our last topic's gonna be hot. Oh, I'm gonna be raging. But these are the actual hot topics. All right, number one. If you're asking the question, why are condo rentals downtown so bad? Because when you look at the numbers, they're actually up, the number of leased units. Year to date, the number of leased condos downtown is actually up 15% over last year. Did you know that? So then you think, well, what the heck? Because I don't see that. If we have a 20% drop in condo rates, where did that happen? Well, here's the magic number. The number of condo rental listings are up 83%. That's your reasoning. So it's not necessarily about whether the number of leased units goes up or down. It's irrelevant. It's your months of inventory. The same thing that saved our market back in April in the freehold segment. And it's the same thing that we're tracking in the condo space today. If we can get that months of inventory to get to its bottom, seeing that it's going to start going back downwards, really downwards, the downward trend of a month of inventory is price growth. And when that happens, that's your chance. That is when there's blood on the streets. Okay, another hot topic. So tenants, this is an article from the Star. Tenants, supporters block sheriff from enforcing eviction order in East York. You guys think this big battle between landlords and tenants is over? It is far from over. Since last Monday, members of Goodwood Tenants Union have been taking turns patrolling outside of 108 Goodwood Avenue in case the sheriff shows up to change the locks on a unit occupied by an Indigenous woman with severe health issues. So here's the deal, guys. It's like you line up to get that video game, that beautiful video game that's coming out. Well, these guys lined up for a week, literally since last Monday, sitting out, waiting for the sheriff to show up in order to say, nuh-uh. Along with a number of others in the building, they were informed that Renee Management, the landlord, if they do not vacate their unit by September 14th, the sheriff would come to forcibly remove them. I mean, that's their job. Right? Late this morning, the GTU saw the sheriff arriving at the building to enforce the eviction order. And what did they do? Within 15 minutes, dozens of tenants and supporters arrived at the scene to successfully prevent them from entering the building. Man, here's what they say. When neighbors heard about this woman getting evicted, we were outraged because she's older, she's Indigenous, and she's unwell. I love this quote. This is an Indigenous woman who has lost income because of COVID-19. This is what colonial violence looks like. This shouldn't happen to anyone. That's the problem. There needs to be no COVID-19 related eviction. So So the law works. What they're saying is the law works until it goes against your views, and then apparently obstruction of justice is now justified. Could you imagine if landlords took the same level of aggression in physically removing tenants during COVID? I don't like this ban on evictions. I'm kicking you out anyways. The government leaders would be up in arms about it, but not here. You want to talk about being overrated, though? Imagine sitting 7 days to block a sheriff from kicking out grandma, right? It'd be like Botox. That part never gets the headlines. Oh, that was funny. All right, moving on. Next topic, COVID. Obviously, COVID's happening. Obviously, the cases are rising. Well, CP24, this might even happen by the time this wavelength hits your ears. Ontario's fall COVID-19 preparedness plan coming, quote, this week, according to Ford. We do have a complete and comprehensive fall preparedness plan that we will start bringing forward tomorrow. And that would be today because this article came out yesterday. Ford also hinted that as many as 60 pharmacies could be hosting coronavirus PCR testing by the end of the week. And Ontario now, as you might have heard, on Monday, we're up 425 cases, the highest daily count since June 2nd. Also, on a city level, Mayor John Tory promises to, quote, bring the hammer down as COVID-19 infections rise in Toronto. All the leaders are doing what they can because cases are rising. But here's the big $1 million question. When, and it's $1 million because the $1 million homes will come below $1 million. When will the closes end? Like, will it go back to stage 2? Or worse yet, will they declare a provincial emergency again? I mean, it's not going to happen this week, but will it happen? And if it does, what does that mean? It means I can't do my open houses. No, but it means that you're not going to be able to kick out your tenant again. You think that that's going to change? No, we already did it once, and clearly it's going to be in line with what tenant advocacy groups are saying. Anyways, moving on. Told you I'm going to get heated. Here we go. We're going to get a little more heated. Ready? Okay. TorontoStories.com. You guys think I get mad at tenant groups? Use buyer's realtor. Well, time for me to flip the hats. Okay, we're going to get mad at the Ontario Real Estate Association. I am a member of OREA. I pay them. I legally have to. Well, TorontoStories.com has an article that says this. Majority of Ontarians believe housing is an important force for economic recovery. I like that sounding. Here we go. And of course it is. Like, duh, right? But here's what they say. Though the situation has changed immensely, the Ontario Real Estate Association says the issues of supply shortages and affordability concerns are likely to remain. Those are the two remaining issues. When all things are over, when COVID is long history, shortages of supply and affordability will continue to be a problem. And let's see, with this article and with the polls, if OREA in their suggestions can kill these two birds with one stone, because killing just one bird is so overrated. Okay, no. Let me ask you a serious question. Can one bird make a pun? No, but two can. Shut up and get to the point. Okay, in fact, a very strong majority of Ontarians think housing is important. In fact, 60% say it's important, and 32% of Ontarians say it's somewhat important, contributor to the provincial economy recovery, according to research conducted by Nanos Research for OREA's recently released policy report called Rebuilding Ontario, a Framework for Recovery. So Tim Hudak, who is a familiar name in the provincial government, he's also the CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Association. He said this: the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic reminds us how important the housing sector is to Ontario's economic health. The key instrument for economic recovery in Ontario is the sale of homes, which will result in an injection of more homes on the market and create spin-off jobs and consumer spending. The best way to do that is with policies that are focused on growth. And then here's where things get sour. Including a land transfer tax holiday, which would make Ontario homes more affordable by temporarily eliminating a punishing tax, bring more homes into the market, and help address our province's supply shortage. Oh, let's get the government involved, right? Let's do it. We're not just going to remove the tax, which really shouldn't have been there on a municipal level in the first place, which is impossible to do at this point because we're so reliant on it. Let's give them a tax holiday. They'll pay for it later. In the meantime, we're going to get jobs, we're going to sell homes, which is just moving people around. I don't know how that addresses housing, but anyways, I'm going to read for you, before we go there, I'm going to read for you an article here. And it's going to talk about, the question is this: why Toronto has among the slowest housing development approval times in the GTA. As I go through some of the highlights here, I want you to think, as a listener, what are some ideas that you might have, or in what areas should we be focusing on bringing down the cost for people to buy homes? Here, tell me what you think. The city of Toronto has among the fewest planners and some of the longest approval timelines for residential development applications of 18 regional municipalities, factors that contribute to the high cost of housing according to a new benchmarking study by the home construction industry. Listen to these numbers. It shows that only Innisfil and Aurora had fewer planners on the municipal staff when measured by 1,000 housing starts. Only Bradford, West Gwillimbury, and Caledon surpassed Toronto's 21-month average approval time. Guys, we have nobody approving people, and it's taken forever. Other municipalities such as Oshawa, Innisfil, Burlington, Oakville, and Barrie had average development costs of 9 to 12 months. We're at 21 months. The Build Municipal Benchmarking Study by Altus Group found the government fees and delays added between $58,000 and $87,000 to the cost of a 2,000 square foot single family home. And on the high-rise units, the additional cost is $44,000 to $66,000. Cha-ching! And development charges and planning fees added to an additional $93,700 to a typical low-rise home and $57,800 to a typical high-rise apartment. It costs just too much money. Combined with taxes and other levels of government, including HST and land transfer tax, the combined fees, taxes, and charges account for 25% of the cost of a new home in the region. While more apartments are being built, here's the other problem. Rentals, the building of rentals, they comprise less than 10% of new construction homes. Less than 10%. So the problem here that they're trying to address is that they're trying to find a place to get people to be able to purchase a home, which as OREA, the Ontario Real Estate Association, that's what you want. That's what gets your membership money. But they don't even do that properly. Like if you were to just listen to the things that I just said, the stats, could you maybe think of a few ways to increase supply and to deal with affordability? Maybe we bring these costs down. Maybe we hire the right amount of people so that even if you didn't bring down any of the transfer taxes, like those are all the same. Even your taxes, same, HST, same, no taxes are affected. But you were able to shorten down the 21-month lag time it takes to bring a property to market and bring it more in line with 9 to 12 months, which we see in other regions. Like you would save tens of thousands of dollars on every single house purchase. But let's see what OREA can come up with to fix unaffordability and supply. Here's what they say. According to statistics, they go back to this land transfer tax thing. For the first $600,000 of home value, it could result in an additional $32,000 homes being sold and 31,000 jobs. So the idea here is we're going to get more people moving. You're going to do stuff. You're going to get out, and it's going to create jobs, spin-off jobs. And I get the argument, but the problem is you're packaging it. That's how you sell it. That's the way you package it to sell it. But is it actually going to help? Right? We're trading 31,000 jobs for unbelievable unaffordability due to demand pressures. Right? I disagree completely with that recommendation, but we need to stop adding demand pressures. They say this. 3 in 10 Ontarians surveyed by Nanos in partnership with OREA said they are likely, 13% said they're likely, and 17% they're somewhat likely to purchase a home sooner if the province announced an LTT holiday. And nearly half of younger Ontarians, that's 18 to 35, said they are likely, 20%, and 25% somewhat likely to do this. Does that sound like it's helping our supply crisis? No, that is the demand pressure. You just mapped out the added demand to our system. Good job. And then they say this, there were 15 more short and long-term opportunities to help get Ontario's economy back on track and create long-lasting jobs. Here are what they are. Remember, we're trying to address affordability. We're trying to address the supply. Tell me if this does this. So permanently increase the land transfer tax rebate for first-time homebuyers to $6,000 from $4,000, which according to Altus would increase sales by 1.6% and free up rental units previously occupied by first-time buyers. I get the thought. But you're just increasing. You think the prices aren't going to go up to $2,000 that you tacked on to make it more affordable for first-time buyers? You're stimulating the demand from first-time buyers, and you're jacking up the affordability, right? You're making it more difficult. That has nothing to do with supply. It doesn't. It's all demand-driven. Next point, creating opportunity zones in struggling communities, which would provide preferential tax treatment for investments in provincially identified communities, creating new residential development and businesses given the potential for long-term endorsement of remote work, right? They're moving out, and you got all these little struggling communities around us. So why don't we, we'll give them tax preference. We'll actually help boost them. Well, that's one way to make a struggling community more expensive. It really is. The government sticks its nose in it, costs go way, way up. But as an investor, it's a great opportunity to dive and invest in a struggling community, knowing that those costs are going to go through the roof. Again, demand pressure, not supply. And then here's our third suggestion, introducing a home renovation tax, a tax credit, similar to the one implemented by the federal government in 2009 to kickstart the economy and create jobs by helping homeowners fix up a property to put on the market, create home office space or room for an elderly family member to age in place. I don't see helping supply. I don't. Just because you call it addressing supply doesn't mean it is. Just like when you go to Georgian Bay, we call them seagulls, but that's a bay. Those are bagels. According to the report, a majority of Ontarians support, that's 53% support and 24% somewhat support, so we're sitting at over 75% here, a home renovation tax credit in particular, with close to 6 in 10 Ontarians saying they are likely or somewhat likely, 28% likely, 31% somewhat likely to use such credit in the next year if introduced. Okay, so you're going to give me money to renovate my home because, we need more competition in the renovation industry because that's going to bring down your cost of building. Oh man, silly people believe it's free money. You actually think it's free money, but you think the tax credit is going to help you, but it's just going to mean a bigger price tag for the province that'll circle back on you down the road. But congratulations to you contractors out there. You're the next business to get propped up by the provincial government. And the joke here is my dad's a contractor. And guess what? They don't need more business. They can't keep up. They actually can't. Maybe we should quit being a real estate professional and become a contractor. Despite the uncertainty brought on by COVID, Ontarians continue to tell us that buying a home is a good investment. It is. It is. Ontarians want to be homeowners, and the health of our economy depends on their ability to be homeowners. I know. This is my point. We're trying to do this, but you're not. These suggestions, at least, are not. Real estate saved our economy during the last downturn, and it can once again be the locomotive that gets us back on track, stimulates the economy, and gets Ontarians back to work. At what cost? Are we going to jack up and remove the unaffordability and tighten the supply ever further in the name of boosting our economy? Is that the plan? Real estate, I agree. It's a great investment. It is. It's my life. It really is. And these recommendations will make it an even better one because as you get in early, prices are going up, but they won't. I repeat, they will not address affordability or supply. It's supposed to be a nice day today, so I'm going to just relax, go for a little bit of a walk before getting some more work done here. And I actually just snagged, fun fact, some sweet orthopedic shoes. Woo! I used to think they were overrated, but I stand corrected. I'm going to leave it there, guys. I hope you learned some stuff. Make sure you follow us, hit the subscribe button, and tell your friends about our podcast. And hopefully you'll see my face in the coming weeks as I start to set up a little bit of a scene where you can watch me flail my arms and get silly, get loco. All right, guys, I'm going to go now. I'll see you next time. Take care and keep it real.